Here's the deal. We have 4 more classes, 4 more lectures. I need to get through the last chapter because the last chapter is about pharmaceuticals. So we'll see how far we can get into this chapter. I'll probably take all next week to do the last chapter because it's about pharmaceuticals. And I think you guys need to know about SSRIs and about all the antipsychotics and whatnot. So we'll be sure and tackle that one. We may skip chapter 9. This is chapter 8. But we'll get as far through this as we possibly can. We're talking about pregnancy and drugs. What were we talking about before? We were talking about how chaotic the lifestyle can be for women who are using drugs. And of course, if they get pregnant, now they've got 2 things to worry about. One is finding their drugs, and the other is what's going to happen with their baby. Besides the effect of the drugs on the fetus, the mother's toxic environment often has deleterious effects on the fetus and mother. Poor nutrition, of course, if she's using drugs. Bloodborne infections, possibly, because she's injecting herself, potentially. Domestic violence because of the lifestyle. Domestic violence is very common. And of course, the potentiality of sexually transmitted infections, especially if she has a boyfriend who is a IV drug user, then the probability that he is passing bacteria back and forth on the needle and with her when he's having intercourse with her potentially can cause sexually transmitted diseases. Most psychoactive substances readily cross the placental barrier, meaning that the tiny infant is exposed to the same drugs at the same level as the mother. And as I told you, I have a relative that was born with a heroin addiction because the mother wouldn't stop during her pregnancy, and it is a family embarrassment. After birth, the drugs will be passed to the baby in the mother's breast milk, and this is can be a problem as well. In the case of my niece, my great niece, her baby was taken away from her, and the baby was given to my brother, who was the great-grandparents. They were the great-grandparents, not the grandparents. And they were the ones that were given custody of the child. Because of the excessive organ and brain development, the first 12 weeks, the first trimester is the most critical period of the baby's life. And of course, potentially through half of this, the mother isn't even aware that she's pregnant. Drugs used during this time period can change the baby both physically and mentally. However, since the brain continues to grow throughout the gestation, neurological damage can be done at any juncture during gestation, and of course this can be a problem. So they need to stay away from drugs for the entire 9 months of their pregnancy. If heroin or cocaine is used during the last trimester, it may cause premature birth. What it does, it causes the placenta to pull away from the uterine wall. And that will cause the baby to be born prematurely. If the baby is born after the mother has used drugs on a regular basis, the neonatal period will be fraught with intoxication, withdrawal, and eventually developmental or learning delays. And of course, this is what we're watching my great-great-nephew for. We're trying to see if he has any developmental problems. It took them 6 weeks to detoxify the poor thing when he was born. If the infant is given concentrated care after birth, they will manage to catch up with their non-drug exposed peers, potentially by the time they make toddlerhood. And that's just about the time, that's about where he is. I don't really communicate with my brother that much. He's embarrassed by what has happened, that his granddaughter was a heroin addict, and she was pregnant with a child and still taking heroin. She not only was taking heroin, but she was also taking a supplemental opioid actually, to keep her from having problems with her pregnancy. So she was taking a double dose of heroin. Idiot. And of course, it's a huge embarrassment for him. It's a huge embarrassment for the family. So I can't call him up on the phone and say, how's the kid doing? Because it's an embarrassment to him, and he doesn't want to talk about it. If I could get him alone, I could probably have a conversation with him, but his wife is very sensitive about these things because most of the problems come from her, not my brother. Alcohol has one of the most devastating effects on fetuses of all the drugs. The effects of alcohol have been studied more than any other psychoactive substance because of the prevalence and the general acceptability of the drug. So alcohol is very common. The first time they found FAS was on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. So they found it among the Lakota in South Dakota. When a mother drinks during pregnancy, the possible effects on the fetus are referred to as FASD, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. The most severe form of FASD is fetal alcohol syndrome. Fetal alcohol syndrome is characterized by physical abnormalities, mental abnormalities, and behavioral abnormalities. These babies are born to mothers who drank heavily during their pregnancy, and that is what the problem is. The growth of an FAS fetus occurs in the womb. It has reduced height, reduced weight, reduced head circumference, reduced brain growth, reduced brain size, facial deformities. They have shortened eyelids, thin upper lip, flattened mid-face, shallow groove in the upper lip. They have heart problems, they have limb problems, they have delayed intellectual development, neurological abnormalities, behavioral problems, visual problems, hearing loss, balance and gait problems. They are usually diagnosed with ADHD, and sometimes they are diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder eventually. They go through ODD, they go through oppositional defiant disorder, then conduct disorder. These kids tend to be problems throughout their lives, unfortunately. And it's mainly because of the alcohol that their mothers drank during their pregnancy. Part of the FASD are less severe disorders, alcohol-related neurodevelopmental disorders, ARND, alcohol-related birth defects, ARBD. Worldwide, FAS affects as many as 2.9 per 1,000 births. In the United States, the rate is 2 per 1,000. Among African Americans, the rate is 6 per 1,000. Asian, Hispanics, and whites have rates between 1 to 2 per 1,000. American Indians have rates that are between 10 to 30 per 1,000. However, I looked this up. I looked it up. I wanted to find out, well, who are they talking about there? What they're actually talking about, they're talking about the groups that would allow themselves to be tested. That was people in Pine Ridge, Cheyenne River, mostly the Sioux in North Dakota and South Dakota. It's also the other Northern Plains tribes like the Gro-Maan and the Blackfeet, those guys. So the figures are fairly high. So does that interpret, so can we take this to the bank as far as the people around here are concerned? You guys have the same alcoholism rate that they have up north. What do you think?
It's probably higher up north.
Higher up north? So what kind of a rate do you think you have here on the reservation? Any ideas? What do you think? Take a guess. It's got to be between 0 and 30.
Oh, like the numbers?
Yeah. What do you think?
6.
6?
26.
6 per?
Oh, you said 0 to 30?
Well, 0, between 0 and 30, yeah. So white people are 2.9 per 1,000. I'm sorry, white people are, all the people in the United States, 2 per 1,000.
Oh, yeah, I was sitting around 6.
African Americans, 6 to 1,000. Asian and Hispanics and whites, somewhere between 1 to 2 per 1,000. What do you think about Navajos? What do you think about your brothers and sisters?
Maybe around 6.
6? You think 6?
It's closer to 10.
10? Come on, Tiffany, what do you think? I got the numbers right here. I looked it up just before.
10.
10?
Yeah.
I've got two different groups here. I've got the Pueblos and I've got Navajos. For Navajos, it's 1.6 per 1,000. I know. For Pueblos, it's 2.2 per 1,000. So it's real close to everybody else in the United States. African Americans are a little bit higher. So we have groups that have far more severe problems with alcohol. Okay, and I keep telling you this, and you guys keep going, oh, alcohol's a real serious problem on the reservation. It is a serious problem on the reservation, but if you go to other places, okay, it's a lot worse. Some places it's a lot worse. Pine Ridge is a mess. In one study of FAS adolescents and adults, it was discovered that all of them had been physically and sexually abused, 60% of the abuse occurring before adulthood. The individuals averaged 6 diagnosable mental illnesses. Select ones had 10 or more mental illnesses, and these were the individuals that were giving birth. Cocaine and amphetamines were used by 558,000 women in the United States every year, with most of them falling into the reproductively viable range. This is very common when I was working at Children's Hospital in Omaha. Cocaine had just gained its popularity. People in Hollywood, everybody was snorting cocaine. So the rich people of Omaha started snorting cocaine too, because that's what people did. They did what other people did. So we had a lot of cocaine problems in Omaha when I was there in the 80s. In the 1980s, when cocaine use was at its peak, it was estimated that 4.5% of all babies born in the United States were exposed to cocaine in the womb. And we saw this. And unfortunately, we saw this especially with the very wealthy people, the people that had lots and lots of money. They were doing cocaine a lot. And the problems that we see with babies who have been exposed to cocaine are things that you don't see with any other problems. Cocaine, of course, is a stimulant, and because it's a stimulant, it really gets into their systems. It can change their entire structure. We had babies that were born with their hearts on the outside of their bodies. We had one baby born without a skull. It had a head, didn't have a skull. I know. What happened? The baby died fairly quickly after it was born. In the inner city hospitals where cocaine use was more prevalent, the percentages range from 15 to 25%. And of course, this was Omaha. It's a Midwest city. You wouldn't think that there would be so much cocaine, but of course there were a lot of rich people, and these rich people were doing this, and they didn't even think about stopping so that they could have a baby. The effects of stimulants, increased heart rate, constricted blood vessels, affects not only the mother but the unborn fetus. For the fetus, the constricted blood vessels result in restricted blood flow, restricted nutrients, restricted oxygen. And this retards development, of course. For habitual users, the effects can be more pronounced. In extreme cases, the increased blood pressure may cause the placenta to separate from the uterine wall, resulting in spontaneous abortion. And of course, we saw this over and over and over again. And of course, I was working in the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit, and one of the things that we were trying to do, we were trying to save these babies. They were being born at 22 weeks, at 26 weeks, at 27 weeks. That wasn't the real problem. We could have saved them if they were just premature, but these were premature babies that were born with all of these other defects. And because of that, almost all of them died. And we saw some really horrendous things. Now, I hate to tell you these stories, but this is reality. And we saw it over and over and over again. So the reality is medicine can do a lot of things, but it can't save somebody if they have a developmental problem like with the cocaine. And of course, then the cocaine was causing spontaneous abortions with these women. And then of course, most of these were the wealthiest people in Omaha. So they were begging us to save the children. Not me, of course, I was just a lab tech. But they were begging the hospital to save the children. And when we couldn't save the kids, they, of course, got all upset. But whose fault was it? Is there anything we could do to protect those children? them stop snorting cocaine. That's the only way to do it. And these are ugly, ugly situations, but there's nothing that we could do about it. Excessive use of stimulants can raise the fetus's blood pressure, causing a stroke. Using in the third trimester can result in extreme activity in the fetus, causing uterine contractions and premature labor. Withdrawal for the fetus involves several weeks of extreme agitation, increased respiration, hyperactivity, and possible seizures. We could tell all over the hospital that we had a baby that was hooked on cocaine because they cry like a cat. So you think that there's a cat stuck in the elevator someplace. But of course it's not, it's a baby. And they're screaming up in MICU. Effects last into the child's second year with lifelong disability rates of 33%. So of all of the problems all of the things that you can do to yourself, cocaine is the worst one. Cocaine's the worst. With FAS, the children develop relatively normally. They have ADHD, sometimes they have conduct problems. But with kids who are addicted to cocaine when they're born, the disability rate is 33%. 1 out of every 3 will have a problem for the rest of their lives. Now, if I didn't come in contact with that, I wouldn't be preaching so strongly. But I came in contact with this every damn day. And you wanted to just slap somebody. You know, you wanted to punch somebody right in the face. How could they possibly do this to their children? And then, of course, they would come in and they'd be all dressed in their yellow clothes because they had to. They're going into NICU and they have to wash their hands and they have these long fingernails, and they have to clean the nail polish off of their fingernails because you can't have nail polish in there. And then they'd come in and they'd be crying about their baby, and you wanted to just punch them right in the face. Tall, skinny white ladies, that's what they were all, tall, skinny white ladies. Since opioid use tends to be more continuous than the binge use of stimulants, the effects are greater. Problems include severe infections from IV drug use for the mother, fetal growth retardation, miscarriage, stillbirth, separation of the placenta from the uterus, once again, just like with cocaine. Babies born to heroin addicts are often premature, smaller, and weaker, and this is what happened with my great-great-nephew. These infants have abnormal sleep patterns that leads to a 600% increase in SIDS deaths for these individuals because they have such an erratic sleep pattern. 60 to 80% of babies born to opioid-addicted mothers go through withdrawals 2 to 3 days after they're born. And this looks like they have hyperactivity, incessant high-pitched crying, and as I said before, it sounds like a cat. Cat caught in the garage door. Increased muscle tone, irregular sleep patterns, increased respiration, poor suckling, failure to thrive, irritability, sweating, tremors, diarrhea, sneezing, vomiting, and of course, they very frequently will die from their seizures. Marijuana is used by 5 to 17% of pregnant women during their pregnancy. I was told when I was in, this guy was from Los Angeles, and he said, well, everybody that he knew, when the woman started having morning sickness, they would give him marijuana. And he said, no, and nobody's having any problems, dude, you know, that kind of stuff. I hate talking to those people, they talk so funny. Anyway, okay, so a lot of people are using marijuana as an anti-nausea medication well, some people are anyway, for morning sickness. And if we read those sites, if we go on the internet and look at those sites, don't they tell you that marijuana can't hurt you? Alcohol will kill you, but marijuana, you can't overdose on marijuana. So therefore, there must be nothing wrong with, obviously nothing wrong with marijuana. A longitudinal study of marijuana exposed fetuses in Canada. Why in Canada? Why in the world is all this stuff coming out of Canada? What's the difference between Canada and the United States? A. They talk funny in Canada? Is that the difference? What's the difference between Canada and the United States? As far as marijuana is concerned, what's the difference?
Are we legalized again?
It's not really legalized, it's decriminalized. And it's been decriminalized since the 60s. I know. So they have a lot more smokers, tokers. So you have to go away. Come on. Okay. It'll be fun. I'll keep talking to you as if you were here. Okay. Good luck on your exam. If you need any help, Johnny's here. Okay. He'll help you. Okay, so in Canada, they decriminalized marijuana, and they've been smoking up there, toking up there a lot longer than we have in the United States. Or at least it was not as illegal in Canada as it was in the United States. So a lot of people toking, a lot of people smoking marijuana. Poor short-term memory, and what they found with these fetuses, this is a longitudinal study. What they found with these fetuses is poor short-term memory and verbal reasoning at age 3, continued poor memory through childhood, lowered verbal performance through childhood, impulsive hyperactive behavior, conduct problems, distractibility, poor executive function. Sounds like ADHD, doesn't it? They did a longitudinal study in New Zealand. New Zealand had similar laws to Canada. And in a 25-year longitudinal study, one of the things they discovered was that the individuals that started smoking marijuana before the age of 12 lost between 10 and 20 IQ points. And I keep talking about this. Of course, I'm not that bright, but I certainly couldn't lose 10 or 20 points off my IQ. If I did, I would be not real bright. I would have an intellectual disability if I lost 20 points off my IQ score. The problem with marijuana is the same as the problem with any other drug that you smoke. Decreased oxygen, of course, irritated alveoli and bronchi in the lungs, decreased weight of the children, and of course they have to go through withdrawals when they are born. Abnormal responses to visual stimuli, increased tremulousness, easily startled, high-pitched cry. So when we talk about people that have been smoking marijuana, we talk about how they act when they're high. And of course they're more mellow, is one of the things that they are. They're more mellow. So you would think that a child that was not infected isn't the right word, but a fetus that used marijuana during the gestation period, you would think that this individual would be mellow, wouldn't you? Wouldn't they be mellow? Or would they be? Wait a minute. When you're smoking marijuana, you're more mellow. But what happens when you're not smoking marijuana and you're not high?
You get stressed and agitated.
Easily.
Yeah.
Right. So unless you keep feeding this baby marijuana, they're going to act like they're not using marijuana. Like they're going to be agitated. Right? They're going to be more stressed. They're going to be easily startled. They're going to have increased tremulousness. They're going to have a high-pitched cry because it hurts. Okay. That is a tragedy, isn't it? Fetal effects, category A, vitamins and other than vitamin A. If you use any of the category A drugs, of course, there's no fetal risks involved. So you can take all the vitamins you want. As a matter of fact, they have fetal vitamins. Pregnancy, vitamins for pregnancy. Category B is acetaminophen and ibuprofen, the analgesics. No problem. You don't have to worry about using either acetaminophen or ibuprofen during your pregnancy. Category C are most medications, almost all medications, including most antibiotics. No fetal risks, no problem whatsoever. Category D are anti-seizure medications, benzodiazepines and tetracycline. That's category D. There is some risk to the fetus if you take these drugs. So if you go in to see your doctor and he gives you pills and you're pregnant, one of the things that he's going to look for is whether it's a category A, B, or C drug. As long as it is, you're okay. But once you get into category D and category X, now we got a problem. Category D, of course, there is a risk to the fetus if it is the only way to keep the mother alive or to keep the mother from having seizures, then potentially you can take your category D drugs. But what will happen to the fetus if you do? What will happen to the fetus is the fetus will have, there will be an effect to the fetus. So potentially you can have your baby, but your baby is going to have ADHD after the baby is born. If it's a category X drug, Accutane and vitamin A, fetal risks are too great for the benefits of the pregnancy, and you will lose the pregnancy anyway. Any medication prescribed for a pregnant woman should be closely monitored. The use of non-steroidal analgesic something or others, NSAIDs can elevate the pregnant mother's blood pressure. Benzodiazepines can accumulate in the fetus's blood, even at safe levels for the mother. Because of the fetus's smaller system, it will take longer for the infant to clear the drugs from his system, and they may be born addicted to benzodiazepines. Because of the slowness in clearing the infant's system, the baby will be born with withdrawals that may persist for weeks. So you have to bring the baby off of the benzodiazepines, just like you have to bring them off of opium, the opiates, the marijuana, and the cocaine. At the turn of the 20th century, women rarely smoked. In 1920, only 5% of pregnant women smoked. Pregnant women smoking peaked in 1997 at about 28.2%. In 2005, only 22.5% of pregnant women smoked during their pregnancy. 17% of the women smoked cigarettes. 8.82% smoked right up to the time they gave birth. The highest rates were among African Americans at 20.12%. The second highest rate was among whites at 14.2%. Sometimes you just can't convince people not to do things. Cigarettes are especially dangerous because of the nicotine and carbon monoxide found in the smoke, along with the 2,000 other compounds that you find in cigarettes. Both carbon monoxide and nicotine cross the placental barrier and reduce fetal oxygen supplies. And this is a problem. You're strangling the child to death. Carbon monoxide. You've heard of carbon monoxide poisoning. There's too much carbon monoxide in a room and you're breathing, then eventually you'll die. And the reason is because carbon monoxide has a stronger affinity for hemoglobin. So if there's oxygen in this room and there's an equal amount of carbon monoxide and oxygen, every time you take a breath, if there's carbon monoxide in there, then it will destroy your red blood cells. Eventually you're dead. But the wonderful thing about this is, and you can take this one to the bank, if somebody dies of carbon monoxide poisoning, their cheeks are the prettiest red, the pink, they're just pink right up. And the corpse stays like that for about 6 or 7 hours. It's really kind of cool. So you go, if you see somebody that has been poisoned by carbon monoxide, and you go in, you may think that they're still alive because their skin is just as nice and pink as you've ever seen skin. It's really kind of unnerving because they look like they're still alive. They're dead, of course. Not a whole lot you can do about it. Women who smoke or come in contact with secondhand smoke are in greater risk of premature delivery. Heavy smoking mothers are twice as likely to miscarry or have spontaneous abortions, and it's because of the tobacco. Babies born to heavy smokers average a birth weight of 7 ounces less, with a smaller head circumference and about an inch shorter. With heavy smokers, there's a higher incidence of cleft palate, congenital heart defects, minor nerve and brain defects, a higher incidence of SIDS, weaker sucking reflex, depressed immune system, more respiratory infections. So not only do we have a smaller child, but we also have a child that doesn't eat very well because they have a poor sucking reflex. Caffeine is a common drug taken in pregnant women in tea, coffee, and soda pop. In one study, 75% of the babies born had caffeine in their system at birth. Infants tend to have a lower tolerance for caffeine than adults do. Caffeine seems to have no long-lasting effects on the child though physicians warn pregnant women away from its use during their pregnancy, hoping, well, you never know what's going to happen next. Prevention of damage should start as soon as the woman discovers that she is pregnant. Physicians will ask the woman for the 4 Ps. Your parents, did either of the women's parents have a problem with drugs or alcohol? Partner, does the woman's partner have a problem with alcohol or drugs? The past, has the woman ever drunk beer, wine, or liquor? And pregnancy, in the month before the woman knew that she was pregnant, did she smoke cigarettes, take drugs, or drink beer, wine, or liquor? If necessary, the woman can be treated for her chemical dependence, whatever that dependence may be. The most frequently abused drugs, 46.5% among high school seniors. The most commonly abused drug is tobacco at 21.6%, marijuana at 18.3%, smokeless tobacco at 6.1%, painkillers 3.8%, amphetamines 3.7%, tranquilizers 2.7%, cocaine 2.5%, inhalants 1.5%, hallucinogens 1.5%. MDMA 1.3%, steroids 1.1%, heroin 0.4%, and any illicit drug 22.1%. In the last 30 years, tobacco and alcohol use has actually declined, while marijuana use has primarily stayed about the same. School environment has the greatest influence on drug and alcohol use. If the individual can reach the age of 21 without smoking and drinking, they probably will never start. Of the people who experiment with alcohol and tobacco, more susceptible, these are the individuals that are more susceptible to peer pressure. 85.7% are still smoking in the 12th grade. If they have been drunk sometime in high school, 83.3% are still getting drunk. If they have ever tried marijuana, 76.4% are still toking. Adolescents who use marijuana weekly are 6 times likelier to cut class or to skip school. One of the great oxymorons of adolescence is that while they think that of their own thoughts as beyond question and their lives as invulnerable, they commit some of the most ill-advised acts that can sometimes lead to death. They get drunk. They get drunk and then they drive. It's got to be the dumbest thing in the world. They get drunk and then they have sex and then they get pregnant. 70% of teen suicides involve alcohol. 50% of date rapes involve alcohol. 40% of drownings involve alcohol.
I'm drinking your water.
Sounds like a better idea. Alcohol and drug use among adolescents has a great deal to do with crime. More than half of the juvenile males arrested test positive for 1 or more illegal drugs. Marijuana is the most frequently found drug among these individuals. So if it makes you more mellow, why are these people committing crimes? Why are so many people who smoke pot? Why are so many criminals who commit a crime smoking pot before they commit their crime? Why is that? If it makes you mellow, if there's no problem with marijuana, why smoke pot and then commit a crime? And some of these crimes are violent crimes. Can you smoke pot and then beat somebody up?
Does it make him hyper?
Must be doing something. I don't know. It kind of messes up the argument. You look at all these websites and they say, if everybody smoked pot, there wouldn't be any crime in the United States. Obviously, that's incorrect. Obviously, they haven't seen the statistics. One of the major reasons people use psychoactive substances is to delay taking care of their problems. When this happens with an adolescent, they may not learn to deal with life's conflicts until they are deep into adulthood. They have prolonged the maturation process. I told you the story of my friend who had 3 women pregnant at the same time. His girlfriend His girlfriend, his ex-wife, and his wife were all pregnant at the same time. And they all gave birth within a week of one another. What a stud. And in order to get away from all that money, he joined the military and went to Vietnam. Of course, they garnished his wages, so he was hardly making any money. Came back with a drug problem. Smoked pot, and he smoked pot for the rest of his life. He couldn't hold down a job. He was kind of spoiled by his parents. They used to own a farm, and they couldn't get insurance for it. So they'd have to put a field up in order for him to be able to drive his vehicle. All you have to do in Indiana was have $10,000. He had put $10,000 up, and that's what they would do. They put up a field, and he kept wrecking his cars, and they kept losing fields. Eventually, they lost the entire farm. He couldn't work. He was getting money from his mother, and when she turned 65 and started getting Social Security, he started stealing her checks. Eventually, she died, and I'm not exactly sure what he's doing now. He may not be alive anymore. He kind of disappeared. This is a guy that never did anything his entire life except make babies. And he's really good at that. Evidently, he was really good at that since he had made three babies at the same time, somehow. Anyway, so he doesn't have any problems. Factors that lead to adolescents to use psychoactive substances: being subject to physical, sexual, or emotional abuse, being mentally or emotionally disturbed, lacking self-esteem, peer group encouragement to use drugs, inconsistent discipline where drug use is tolerated, dropping out of school, getting caught in juvenile justice system, getting pregnant, living in poverty, lacking alternative activities, being in a school that does not control drug problems. Factors that help children avoid drugs: a strong sense of family participation and involvement, family position on drugs, alcohol, and sex that the child can adopt as their own, strong spiritual sense and community involvement, attachment to be clean and sober adult role model. The reality may be, and you guys keep telling me these stories, you know of families where everybody drinks. Everybody in the family drinks. Grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, brothers, sisters, everybody drinks. So if you come up from a family that has a strong position against drug use or drinking, potentially you'll be able to stay away from it much more easily. This is hard for me to talk about because my family, I was raised in a dry family. We didn't drink, we didn't smoke, we didn't use any drugs. And I have one brother that drinks. Socially, nobody else drinks. We all were fairly clean and sober our entire lives. So it's not easy for me to understand all of this. Why people would do this kind of stuff. It just doesn't make any sense. It's so self-destructive. It just doesn't make any sense. But I grew up in a Methodist county, and that was dry. I mean, it was completely dry. You couldn't get any alcohol except in the town. You had to go to the town in order to get any alcohol. They didn't sell alcohol any place except in liquor stores. You couldn't get liquor in the grocery stores. The corner drugstore didn't sell alcohol. There were like 3 places in town where you could get alcohol. So we saw it very rarely, and we didn't see it as a positive thing. We saw it on television, but we didn't see it in our neighborhood. There are programs that have been developed to help school-age children, K through 12, stay away from drugs and alcohol. The DARE program, I don't think it exists anymore. The Drug Abuse Resistance Education, it's a 16 to 17 week session conducted by uniformed police to 5th and 6th graders. I don't think it exists anymore. When I was teaching in Japan, we had the DARE program. Does it still exist here?
I don't know, but when I was in fifth grade, yeah.
Yeah, so you did the DARE thing? Did you guys do the DARE thing when you were in the 5th or 6th grade? Okay, so maybe it still exists, maybe it's still around. Dare to Be You, DTBY, Family Matter, Lions Quest, Skills for Adolescents. This is really kind of interesting because when I was in California, in 2000, we were doing research, educational research for the Lions Quest program. And we went to all of the junior high schools in the Los Angeles area, doing research, looking at using Lions Quest. Multi-system therapy, MST, New Beginnings program, project towards no drug use, seeking safety, life skills training. This increases your social skills to help resist peer pressure. All the programs to help prevent drug abuse are similar. They all involve a coordinated effort among family members, teachers, and other school officials to show kids that they don't have to drink. These school-based programs tend to teach life skills, resistance education, how to resist your peers trying to get you to drink, and normative education. Normative education aims at correcting erroneous beliefs about the prevalence and the acceptability of alcohol and drug use among an individual's peers. This is going to get really interesting if they're legalizing marijuana, because they legalized marijuana in California, so which is the largest state in the union. So we'll see what happens next. This is really kind of fascinating. Are they going to teach these individuals that they shouldn't smoke pot, even though it's legal now? Of course, alcohol has been legal forever. Well, since 1932 anyway. So alcohol has been legal for an extended length of time, but we can still say it's not good for you. Family-focused primary prevention is a necessary adjunct to any school-based program. Experimentation, social use, habituation, and abuse usually begins in junior high school, the 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. Because of this proclivity, primary prevention needs to continue while secondary prevention is put in place to deal with those who didn't get the message. School personnel and families should be trained to recognize drug use and how to deal with the consequences of drug use. For those students who begin abusing drugs on a regular basis, treatment must be sought to reduce the probability of a lifetime of abuse. Such a program as the Positive Behavioral Interventions and Support program is an adjustment to the environment to reduce the problem, building general competencies and teaching replacement skills, implementing consequences to promote positive behaviors and deter problems, and crisis management or relapse plans. 1 in 4 children in the United States is exposed to alcohol abuse or dependence in their family. These children can be affected by alcohol even when they don't use. These children may play different roles in their family. Hero or model child tries to bring the pride to the family. So that would be the individual that is the athlete or the scholar of the scholar in the family. This would be the hero or model child. Problem child demands attention and is the most likely to use psychoactive substances. This would be the individual that it's the individual that's most likely to get in trouble. The lost child, this individual acts shyly. They sidestep problems by avoiding family and social activities. They hide in the room a lot. This is the shy child. The mascot or the family clown tries to erase tension in dysfunctional family by being funny or cute. They have a hard time growing up because they have been the clown. They have actually been the foil for the family. For that reason, of course, if you've got the hero or the model child, that's just one kid. That's the golden child, as I refer to them, the golden child. But that's only one child. If you've got 5 or 6 kids, they're going to have to take on one of these roles in the family. Has anybody ever seen this before in families, where they have different individuals and they don't all act the same? You have one child that is the golden child, and then you have another child that's the black sheep of the family, and then you have another child that is the clown in the family, And potentially you got another kid in the family that hides in their room all the time. You never talk to him. Have you seen this?
Well, just 3 out of 4. The only one that I have not seen is basically the one with the, let's see, Shy Kid I've seen,
Yeah.
the Clown Kid I've seen, and then, what was the third one?
You got the problem child, the lost child, the mascot, and the hero.
Okay, but the fourth one basically was based on if he or she was able to get involved with inappropriate stuff such as drugs or alcohol,
Right.
and that would definitely make an impact in the house.
Well, if you identified yourself, which one of these people would you have been in? I mean, it doesn't have to come. It doesn't have to be in a family of alcohol or drug abuse. It can be anything. We all take different roles. I've got 2 kids, and I had one of my kids was the golden child, and the other kid was the clown, which was kind of cool because we didn't have any bad kids. I mean, they were only 2 kids.
Yeah.
So, if you identified yourself, which would you identify yourself as?
Probably being with I was probably
The golden child?
Yeah.
Because you're the oldest in the family?
Yeah.
And that's very normal. How about you, John? What do you think?
I think I'm kind of like the hero.
The hero?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, because I used to have a brother who was like a little shy. He never really went anywhere or never came out of his room. And then my other siblings, they were like kind of like a problem child.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, and then the golden child, I'm not really too sure. I might be the golden child too. I don't know.
You're the white sheep among black sheep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fascinating. How about you, Tiffany?
I think you can probably say the golden child.
You're the golden child too? Well, you would think that individuals going to college, of course, you would be the model child or the hero child or the golden child, what I like to call the golden child. I obviously was not the golden child in my family. I have a sister that became a lawyer. And she's far more accomplished than I was.
Coming from me, I would think of myself as the black sheep of the family.
Because you're different than everybody else.
Yes, but coming from my siblings, they look at me as the golden child because I get all the attention.
Because you're good.
That's what they
You do the right thing. Okay. That's what they as long as that's what they did, we're okay. Many alcoholic beverage companies target their advertising toward college freshmen, as establishing brand loyalty may generate as much as $20,000 to $50,000 worth of revenue over the individual's lifetime. 49% of full-time college students binge drink and or abuse prescription and legal drugs. This is 2.5 times the amount of abuse found in the general population. And for this reason, of course, they're targeting college freshmen. The statistics on college students has varying degrees of positive and negative. Daily smoking dropped from 15% in 1993 to 12% in 2005. Fraternity and sorority members are more likely to drink than non-members, 88% versus 67%. Binge drink, 64% compared to 37%. Driving drunk, 33% compared to 21%. Smoke marijuana, 21% as compared to 16%. And smoke, 26% versus 21%. So joining a fraternity or a sorority is not really the best idea in the whole wide world. Something just happened at the University of Syracuse. They just kicked a fraternity off campus, and the reason they did is because of drug use. Only 6% of addicted college students seek help. 78% of college students who use illicit drugs have sex, compared to 44% of those who never use drugs. Psychoactive substances do have a heavy impact on our college campuses. 1,717 deaths in 2007 from alcohol-related injuries. 97,000 victims of alcohol-related rape or sexual assault. 696 assaults by another student who has been binge drinking. In 2002, the federal government legislated to deny college students federal aid if they had a drug conviction on their record. Of the 10,437,000 who applied, 41,000 were denied aid, while an equal number were waived who had completed a drug treatment program. 97,000 victims of alcohol-related rape or sexual assault. There are movies made where men get women drunk and then they have sex with them. And this is their technique, is getting the women drunk.
Mm-hmm.
I know. Yeah. Okay.
Not me, but.
No, of course
one
not.
idiot who did
Yeah.
that.
An idiot that just got out of court, as a matter of fact.
Exactly.
Exactly. So this is a problem. This is a problem. People have this idea that you can get somebody drunk and then you can have sex with them. Is it okay to have sex with a drunk person? Is it okay, Johnny?
It's okay to what?
Have sex with a drunk person.
If they're too drunk.
It's like a dead person.
Yeah.
But, you might enjoy having sex with a drunk person.
I don't know about that.
Brother, is there something I don't know?
No. Well, he laughed. He thought it was funny.
No, I'm kidding.
No, the reality is that there are a lot of men that they think that it's okay to have sex with somebody as long as they're drunk. In the United States military, if you have sex with a drunk person, then they could charge you with statutory rape. In the military, a woman cannot agree to have sex with you if she's been drinking. She can only agree to have sex with you if she's sober. I know. So in the old days, when guys used to take women to the NCO club or the officers club, get them drunk and then take them back to their place and have sex with them, that can't happen anymore. It can't, because that is considered rape. I had a friend that the first night that she was on base, she went to the officers club, and of course, people kept buying her drinks, and eventually she ended up drunk. She was going out to her car, and at the base, it wasn't the base commander, it was the base vice commander, followed her out to her car, and took off her clothes and raped her. And when she told somebody about it, they said, "Have you been drinking?" And she said, "Yes." He said, "Well, there's nothing you can do about it, because you have been drinking." So in the old days, if you had been drinking, then you couldn't say no. Or if you got raped, then it was your fault. But now, of course, everything has changed completely. Everything has gone the other direction. So you can't have sex with somebody after they've been drinking. I was talking to my wife the other day, and I mentioned this to her, and I said, I feel kind of guilty because I've had sex with you after you've been drinking, and it kind of feels like rape. And she said, "Well, I wouldn't worry about it." She called me all kinds of stupid idiot because I was even thinking those thoughts. I guess I've never done anything I wasn't supposed to do. Anyway, but there's always a possibility. There's always a possibility that my wife could get upset with me for because I had sex with her after she had been drinking, and could charge me with rape, I guess. Even the non-drinkers are affected by the drinkers. In a study of on a campus where over 50% of the campus were binge drinkers, 87% of the non-drinkers, other students reported being victims of assault, being victims of unwanted sexual advances, having sleep interrupted, having study interrupted, suffering property damage, having to care for a drunken student, having to clean up after a drunken student, having impaired quality of life because of the drinking. And there are select colleges that are known as party schools. One of them is just right up the road, Colorado State. is considered a party school.
I sit there with my clipboard, check, 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 check.
So Colorado State is considered a party school. ASU is considered a party school.
Especially when you had a roommate trying to crawl in the window at all hours of the night when you're asleep.
There you go. I hope they didn't pass out and start vomiting all over the room. They did that
I've had
too.
happen.
Nothing more miserable. Drinking and drug experimentation are seen by some as a rite of passage for college students. However, one approach to the control of college drinking is a normative approach where the myths of rampant drinking are debunked. For example, 68% of college students thought that their peers thought frequent intoxication was acceptable, while only 14% actually did. Within 18 months, within disseminating normative information, one college campus found that 16% reduction of drinking to get drunk, 21% reduction in frequent heavy drinking, 31% reduction in missed classes, 36% reduction in property damage, 40% reduction in unprotected sex. Means of controlling alcohol use, regulate campus drinking, 25% of campuses ban beer, 32% prohibit liquor on campus, 98% prohibit kegs in dorms. Provide alcohol, tobacco, and drug-free dorms. These are known as wellness dorms. 2/3 of the campuses offer such dormitories. Prohibit alcohol or campus events and fraternity sorority parties. Announce and enforce campus alcohol and drug policies. Work with the local community to make sure that the alcohol is not served to minors, and strengthen academic requirements. At my alma mater, Wabash College, they have just recently opened up independent dormitories that are drug and alcohol free. And I donated money to build those dormitories. One of the problems on the Wabash campus was that most of the people were fraternity people, and there are no rules as far as the fraternity people were concerned. So I decided that I would donate money to help build the drug and alcohol-free dormitories. We'll see what happens. We'll see if it works. Means of controlling alcohol use on college campuses, schedule more classes on Friday. Keep the library and recreational facilities open longer. Prevent alcohol promotions on campus. Actually, this is this has happened on this campus. The library is open longer now, and also the weight room is open until 8 o'clock every night.
Maybe that might help.
Yeah, it's also open on the weekends. It's open 10 o'clock to 3 o'clock. So that helps if you want to go lift. Prevent alcohol promotions on campus. Notify parents when students run afoul of the drug and alcohol regulations. Provide server training for bartenders at college-sponsored functions. Ban alcoholic beverage advertising in the college newspaper. 50% of campuses ban such advertising. And of course, this is a dry reservation, so we would certainly not see alcohol advertised in any of the college publications. Controlling alcohol use on college campuses, integrate substance abuse education into the curriculum, maintain a substance abuse officer to oversee on-campus use and abuse, join a higher education prevention consortia, 90 such consortia do exist, create programs to work with the neighborhood and the community, initiate early detection, intervention, enforcement, and referral. I would suggest to you, if you have the opportunity, of course Johnny's done now, he's got like 2 weeks left and he's out of here. But I would suggest, if you get the opportunity to go to AHEC, that you go to AHEC and see what the other the other tribal colleges look like. I think it's a really educational opportunity for people. We know what it looks like down here in Arizona, but most of the tribal colleges are not here. I think there's only this is the only tribal college in Arizona, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I think,
Tahana Road.
yeah, this guy's out there, but
Yeah, they were a member of AHEC when I was up in Montana. There's 7 in Montana. South Dakota has 4. North Dakota has 3. So at least you get to meet people from other places. The biggest problem that tribal colleges are fighting is alcohol abuse. And of course, in the Northern Plains, the alcohol problem is much more severe than it is here. So if you get the opportunity, I would suggest going to visit another tribal college. It's a very eye-opening and educational experience. Studies show that a good drug education program will actually increase the level of experimentation, but decrease abuse. Bad education will actually increase abuse. Studies show that as most college students mature, that their alcohol and drug use becomes more sensible. The reality is that the underage drinking that takes place on college campuses is more prevalent than overage drinking or drinking of people that are legal. They actually drink less once you reach the age of 21. People take psychoactive substances either to enhance some aspect of their sexual sensation or not realizing that it will interfere with their sexual sensations. Select psychoactive substances can replace normal sexual emotions, meaning that the emotions will seem to be there when they are not. Intimacy, comfort, love for one's children, release from anxiety. One of the things, once upon a time, let's see, how can I explain this? Once upon a time I had a girlfriend. I know, everybody's shocked. Once upon a time I had a girlfriend, and the reason she was my girlfriend was because the guy that she had been married to, she married him in a drunken stupor. Both of them were drinkers, and both of them thought that they were madly in love with each other. But most of it had to do with the alcohol. They thought they drank every night. So when they had sex, they considered each other the most wonderful person in the world. Well, since they stayed drunk most of the time, they didn't know each other when they weren't drunk. She had to have surgery of some kind, so she had to stop drinking. When she came home, she wasn't allowed to drink for like 3 or 4 weeks. Well, geez, that opened her eyes big time. As soon as she saw her husband, when he was drunk and she was sober, he wasn't nearly as attractive as he was when she was blind drunk. So she left him. Eventually she left him. They fought they fought to stay together, and it just didn't work. Because the attraction between the two of them was in a fog of alcohol. And so they had no idea who the other one was. And eventually, of course, they got a divorce. And then she became my girlfriend, my boyfriend. Then she became my girlfriend. Anyway, so a lot of these things are blinding. Alcohol can blind you. Love, sex, and drugs, a glass or 2 of wine to get you in the mood. And this is, of course, what happened with those two. Cigarette after sex. And the reason that you would smoke a cigarette after sex, sex is because it is a vasoconstrictor, and it will bring you back to normal faster. Popper to intensify an erection or an orgasm. Amphetamines to delay ejaculation. Marijuana to enhance the newness of a situation. Remember, when you're smoking marijuana, everything is so interesting. Dude, did you see my hand? It is so intricate. Wow, I know.
I'm sorry, I had a flashback of my cousin brother. He had, because I was there babysitting their kids.
Sure.
And he was in his room and it got so quiet, so I went back there to go check on him. I knew how my cousin's family was.
Right.
So he's sitting there, I guess he was smoking up back there with a big old we've ever seen.
Bong?
Yeah, it's, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of those, so he's sitting there rotating that thing, and he's like, hey, look, it's moving, the bubbles are moving. And I was like, let me see, I was like, really? I was like, it's not moving, he goes, no, it is moving. And I was like, no, it's not.
Fascinating, isn't it? Everything's so fascinating. Ecstasy to increase empathy, of course. Drugs are desirable when the individual feels a physical, social, or emotional deficit. When they are aging, of course, they're more likely to drink because they are getting older and they're getting slower and everything's changing. And they want to feel like they did when they were younger. Shyness, if they're shy, of course, they may use drugs to get over their shyness. Lack of confidence, diminished desire, diminished abilities. All of these things are reason to imbibe. Unfortunately, the same drugs, when used long-term, may create the reverse effects: lack of sexual interest, physical depression, inability to achieve an erection, inability to achieve orgasm. One of the things that we know about alcohol is that if used in the proper amount, then it can enhance all of these things. But once you start using to excess, these substances or the alcohol will cause all kinds of interesting sexual problems. Drugs may trigger sexual aggression, sexual harassment, rape, child molestation, high-risk sexual behavior. I had a student when I was up in Fort Belknap. She was married to a guy, a nice guy. She was madly in love with him. Every time she started to graduate, he would get her pregnant. It was really kind of interesting, but he would get her pregnant. One day, he was drinking whiskey, and he wasn't with his wife. He was at somebody else's home, and evidently the whiskey made him strange, different. He raped a little boy, and of course you can imagine what happened after that. The two families, of course, were at each other's throats for one thing, but you can imagine what she was thinking. Eventually she ran off with the guy. They had to run off, they had to leave the reservation because this other family was going to kill him. So they had to hide the guy out. It was really quite a mess. Anyway, so here he had 3 children with this one lady, but he drank whiskey and he raped a little boy. I'm not exactly sure what was going on in his head, but was it the whiskey that made him do what he did? Anyway, we need to stop right here. We'll pick this up next time. Potentially we will finish this chapter next time so that I can get into and we'll skip chapter 9, if that's okay with everybody. Okay. We'll skip chapter 9 and go on to chapter 10. So you don't have to do chapter 9 quiz since we won't cover it.
Can we do a different one?